Welcome to People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gers, the professor of transitions. And today's episode is one you won't want to miss. This week, we're joined by Brianne Rush, founder of Independence Lab, a platform devoted to helping ambitious graduates gain clarity and confidence after college. Brianne knows what it means to defy expectations. She went from intern to managing editor of Dance Spirit magazine in New York City in just 1 year, and later climbed from employee to vice president at Kuno Creative, where she led growth strategies for Fortune 500 giants like Aramark and BASF. Her rise wasn't fueled by playing by the old rules. It came from decoding unspoken workplace dynamics, challenging outdated advice, and learning to advocate fiercely for herself and others. Her story has been highlighted in such publications as Forbes, Success, the LA Examiner, and Women We Admire. Most recently, she was named one of the top 50 women leaders in Ohio in 2024. Today, Brianne is channeling her nearly 20 years of marketing and operations leadership into empowering the next generation, especially young women stepping out of college and into the workforce. Through Independence Lab, she equips them with skills to thrive emotionally, professionally, and financially, helping them turn uncertainty into momentum and independence into reality. Get ready for a conversation about courage, clarity, and breaking the mold. Good morning, Brianne.
Wow, good morning, Bob. That was so lovely to hear all of that.
It was all very well deserved. Let's jump right in, Brianne. Leaving
Sure.
college often feels like stepping into the unknown. The structure and identity that school provides suddenly disappears, and many graduates feel lost. From your perspective, what's the biggest challenge grads face in this transition, and why do you think it trips so many of them up?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You lose that structure. You had classes, a schedule, a syllabus, you had semesters, you had grades, and all of that goes away. So you're left with this just vast openness of opportunity, but very little guidance. And at that stage in your life, you can build a really strong foundation that will help you throughout your entire life. But if you are just kind of drifting, then it's going to show up later in your life too. So that's really what I focus on is setting that foundation after you leave college. And one of the best things that you can do there is start creating your own routines or structure based on your life goals at the moment. That might be a little bit daunting, but we talk a lot about that at the Independence Lab, and we cover things like career, cash, and confidence.
What I've seen is one of the most frustrating parts of the job search is sending out countless applications and hearing nothing back, being ghosted. That silence can really chip away at your confidence. Brian, how can new graduates stay resilient when they're not getting responses from employers?
I was putting out a lot of content and information around how to ace your interviews, and I was hearing back, but how do I get the interview? So, what I really thought about is okay, you can't really control the responses, right? If you're applying online, you have no control over if they're going to tell you you get an interview or not, or if they just don't even reply at all. But what you can control are two things. You can control how you're spending your time and the quality of what you're putting out into the universe. So, that time, how should you spend it? You should not spend it by going onto Indeed or LinkedIn and just mass applying 50, 100 applications at a time. That will just send your resume right to the bottom of the stack. What you should do instead is spend your time doing things that are going to make you stand out. So apply on companies' websites instead of that job website. They just don't like that. They want to see that you took the time to go to their website and apply through their application process. So that's number one. Spend your time doing that. Number two, update your resume, update your cover letter to include those keywords on specific job descriptions. I know you guys hear this, so I won't go into too much detail there, but take the time to do that. And then you should be prioritizing connections. So instead of 50 applications, spend your time building a couple really good relationships, whether that's with your alumni group, whether it's through your parents' friends or old teachers. Start to make those connections and spend your time doing that. I'd rather see five really good connections that are going to lead to well-received application over 50 mass applications.
Brianne, are there any other suggestions you have or other strategies to help that young job seeker break through and actually get to the interview stage?
So this one, I think, again, controlling the time that you have, there is an opportunity for young people to utilize the tools available to them. And so I'm, of course, talking about technology and really building something for themselves. So what do I mean by that? I think if you want a job in, we'll just say marketing, because that's where I'm very familiar, and you're not getting your application there, you're not getting a lot of responses or a lot of interviews, start asking to interview people with your dream job. So ask them, do you have 30 minutes, like you and I, Bob, are talking right now? It doesn't have to be a podcast, but do you have 30 minutes? I'm building a channel all about marketing experts, and I would love to talk to you. Record this, put it on YouTube, and just start building your channel about marketing excellence. And this is going to do a couple things for you. It's going to build those connections that we just talked about. It's going to stroke their ego that you have asked them to do this. And so that's going to maybe open up some doors you weren't expecting. It's going to help you gather insights and learn. So when you do get in an interview, you're going to have a lot more to talk about. And it's going to actually build your personal brand. So you go from like being like every other person where you are asking for a job to somebody that can go into an application or an interview and say, look at what I have built. I have learned so much and I have all of these connections. And that is going to make you stand out so much. So you've built this now, you have a couple interviews under your belt. You can put that on your resume, and that is something that is going to probably catch the eye of these hiring managers and get you into that room.
Speaking of tools, the elephant in the room in today's marketplace and in business in general is AI, artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about its use for the young graduate looking for the job, and what do you see its use in the future?
So I think that businesses have no real clue what business is going to look like tomorrow, right? So AI is just absolutely changing everything. And so to say, well, this is what my business is going to look like in 3 or 5 years, or maybe even in a year, nobody is feeling as confident as they once did. So when they are hiring, they are looking for people who are willing to learn and who are adaptable. So when you can showcase that, you are going to be more hireable. And so what does that actually look like? I was a journalism major. It is no longer, I have a journalism degree and I'm going to do the journalism job start to finish, and that is what I'm being hired for. What you are actually being hired for now is, yes, somewhat of the skills that you have, but it is actually probably 50%, if not more, your willingness to learn, to stay ahead of the curve, to actually show up with AI skills in your pocket that it go beyond just Chat GPT and showcase that you are a self-learner, a self-starter, that you can adapt. And I think those are the people that are going to get jobs, and they can't be replaced by AI because somebody has to use the AI to do these things. So, do I think that these jobs are going to be replaced? Some of them, sure. But if you can use AI to your advantage, and at this stage in your career, that means taking 15 minutes a day to learn a new platform and what it can do for the industry that you are in, and then showcasing that along the way as you go through this job process, man, that's really where you're going to stand out.
Now, I hear a lot of graduates who worry they don't have enough experience to be taken seriously. But I think everyone has to start somewhere. How can someone with little or no work experience still demonstrate real value that they could bring and the credibility that they want to display?
I think that everybody has stories to tell. So, whether that is from your schoolwork, your campus organizations, your part-time job, your babysitting, your family life, trials and tribulations you've been through, cool places you've visited, you have stories that have developed who you are as a person. And there is value in that. There is value in everything that you have learned up until this point. But the only way that somebody from an interview standpoint is going to know that about you is if you tell a good story. And that is something that I really want to get across is you don't have to have three corporate jobs under your belt to bring value. You need to simply look back at your life. And that was something that I was able to do my interviewing process when I moved to New York, or when I was 17 and 18, I had to have heart surgery. And so that has nothing to do with work, right? And I was able to tell that story of what happened and what I learned from it and how I came out the other side with way more resilience, way more gratitude, and telling that story. In that case, it made me stand out. But if you have something similar, it's going to help you stand out and showcase that life is the real teacher and not that I was just in this job and I can bring those skills to the table. You will get there. You will have jobs where you can talk about that in future interviews. But right now, right out of school, you need to look at your life and what you have learned from it.
And kind of a follow-up to that, I think, is that you have to know enough of the key parts of the jobs that you're interested in and interviewing for, and helping the hiring team understand how those life stories fit into those key data points of that job. Do you agree?
Yes, I 100% agree. I would recommend that people write down their stories. So as you're going through this process, I created a template, it's called a life resume. And so it talks you through this, but you write down your stories so that the first time you're saying them isn't in the interview, but that clarifies things so you can think about, to your point, Bob, this story matches with this type of question, or this story goes along to show how I would solve a problem, or you know what I mean? You can kind of match them up once you get them down on paper and start practicing telling them.
We hear so much, Brianne, about technical skills and technical credentials, but I hear many leaders say that those aren't what get people hired or promoted. From your perspective, what actually moves the needle in someone's job search or career in those soft skill areas, and why do you think they impact the success?
You have a degree, and how many other people have that same degree? They went through the same classes, they have the same skill sets, right? So that's kind of baseline at this point. You need to have your hard skills in place, but lots and lots of other people do as well. So, what I say is emotional intelligence outranks expertise. So, what do I mean by that? Well, 57% of global employers indicated that communication is the most desirable skill for potential recruits. And that was from a recruiter survey. And so, you don't really go to college. I guess there's maybe some degrees that cover that, but you don't really go to college and learn how to communicate well. That's something that you have to build yourself. And I really think that you can showcase this by how you're presenting yourself in an interview. So, for example, when they say, tell me about yourself, if you sit there and tell them, well, I was born on August 4th, 1984, or whatever, that's my birthday. So I just shouted out how old I am. But if you start telling them your lifelong story or reading the bullet points off of your resume, they're going to know right off the bat that you don't have the right communication skills. What you actually should do is again, tell a little bit of a story. And stories make you super memorable, by the way. In this case, what I would say to do is pick your through line. So, what is your origin? For me, I loved telling stories. It's why I went into journalism and later into marketing. I love telling stories. And then the second step to that is to tell a little bit of personal background that relates to that. So for me, I started writing newspapers in my bedroom when I was 8 years old and distribute them to my family. And that ended up with a journalism degree. And then I went on to write for magazines. But now, here's the third part, you need to relate it to the job that you're actually applying for, which I'll use the example of when I went into marketing. Now, I don't think that journalism is the best fit for me because I don't love hard-hitting news. What I actually want to do is help a brand tell their story and make a difference in the life of their consumers. So now I've kind of put a nice, pretty bow on why I'm applying for this job and why I would be good at it due to this passion that I have. That was your origin, and the history that I've built behind it. So those three steps, your origin or through line, a little bit of relevant history, and then how it relates to the current job. And what that does is actually showcases what an amazing communicator you are, which is this skill set that is so hard to find, but every company wants.
What have you heard as the one, two, three most difficult interview questions that candidates receive, and how should they prepare to answer those?
Oh, probably one of the hardest is why should we hire you? Right? And it's like, oh, your brain just goes in 1,000 different directions. But I think what you should do in that case is empathize, which is another emotional intelligence skill, is empathy. You should empathize with the person who is interviewing you, or you can empathize with the company as a whole. What are they trying to achieve? What are their goals? What are their pain points? What are their challenges? Those are all things that you should prepare before the interview is to understand that information. But when you put your empathy hat on, what happens is you can tell them why they should hire you in relation to what's going to help them, what they are salivating over hiring. So in that case, say the company is trying to transition into using AI more appropriately. Well, you could say, hey, I've spent the 3 months that between my college graduation and right now getting to know AI inside and out. I have explored 15 different platforms and I understand how to use them in an efficient way to achieve this outcome, which I believe is something that your company is striving to achieve. It's actually a lot more enticing for them to hire you if you go that route to answer that question versus why should I hire you? And you say, well, I have this degree and I'm really excited about the role. That's just not all that compelling. So that's probably one of the hardest, but that is the equation to answer that in the best way possible is to empathize and showcase your skills in achieving their challenges and their goals.
And I think that no one finds a job or builds a career completely on their own. Mentors, sponsors, champions often play a really significant role in that process. But again, this can be intimidating, I think, to approach those mentors, sponsors. How can a grad go about finding and building these kind of relationships for themselves?
Ask. I think that's the most important thing, right? Is to sit down and make a list of literally everybody that you know and who they know and start asking. So start with your family members, your parents, your siblings, who do they know? Then ask, your aunts and uncles and your neighbors and then your alumni and just start asking, hey, I'm looking for a job in marketing or software engineering or whatever it is. Do you know anybody that can help me? Do you know anybody that would be willing to have a conversation with me for 5 minutes? That's the most important thing. So asking is the first step that a lot of people are just terrified to do. They are terrified, and I don't blame them. It's very difficult, especially somebody that's an introvert, to go and ask somebody to do something for them. But the good news is if you remember that these people had help along their path And most of them are very willing to help you as well if you ask. That kind of does a little bit of a mindset shift for you. So you feel a little bit better asking them. But number one, you need to ask. Number two, when you do ask and they say yes, you need to show up prepared. So do not ask them questions that you can find out on Google. You should know things like how long they've been in the role or their title and things like that. Ask them questions that you can't find anywhere else. So, what surprised you most about being in this role? What skill set did you have to develop to get good at this role? Things like that are going to be helpful and meaningful and not waste their time. And then the last part I would say is to follow up, but follow up in a way that's meaningful. So I so appreciate you sharing that story. I applied it in this way and it helped me achieve this thing. It was so inspirational for me. If you follow up like that, you're actually building probably a lifelong relationship versus something that was just transactional. So don't forget to follow up. It is something that is meaningful to them that they spent their time well, and it's going to help you as well as you move through your career.
I think a lot of graduates actually feel just stuck. They don't even know what's next or what they want or which direction to go. If someone who's listening right now feels lost, Brian, what's the very first step you would encourage them to take to start moving forward in a direction that they are interested in?
Well, I would first say that they should know it's okay to not know. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people in their 40s and 50s don't know. So you are not alone, and I think that's important to know because the way the world works now, there's so many opportunities put in front of you. So you're on social media and you're seeing people who are traveling and making their living on Instagram. And you're thinking, well, should I do that? Should I travel? Should I quit my job? Should I get a job? Do I go back to school, graduate school? Like there's just so many avenues. And so you're kind of in this decision paralysis where you can't even take a step forward. So my advice is little baby steps, first of all. All the things that we talked about today would be any one of them would be a really good first step. So baby steps is the first thing, right? So either send that message asking for a networking interview or for the recording of a YouTube video, start your channel. Start writing down your stories that we talked about. Any one of those are a great first step. And I also want to just add the note that your 20s, so this group that I'm talking to, it is for exploring. I spent a couple years in New York in journalism, and then I ended up moving back to Ohio and completely changing my career into marketing and then operations. So I wouldn't have known to do that if I hadn't put myself out there and tried things. And it's okay that it didn't last for my entire career or last for decades. 20s are all about exploring the jobs that you want and enjoy, the work that you enjoy, the people that you enjoy, and you should take full advantage of that.
You know, that exploring concept is an interesting one. I think that many grads leave school with a picture of quotation marks success that might not actually fit who they are
Mhm.
or what they want to be. How can they start to define success on their own terms instead of chasing someone else's version of it, i.e., parents, friends,
Right.
professors?
Yeah. So for me, I graduated, like I said, with a journalism degree, and I was also a competitive dancer growing up. I was very much on the creative side. So if you told me I was going to later in my career be in operations role and be super passionate about growing a business and doing like all the business stuff, I would not have believed you. No way. So what I would say is to start noticing what you enjoy during your day, and that goes for while you're at work and outside of work. Just what do you enjoy? And then take a step back and ask yourself why. Is it for me so much that I love looking at numbers and spreadsheets? No, I don't. But what I love is this idea of building something. So in my day job, you mentioned I work at Kuno Creative, which is a digital marketing agency, and I just get jazzed about building it. I want to get the best people in there. I want to get the best clients in there. I want to offer the best services. And I'm just constantly thinking, how do I build this? How do I make it bigger? How do I make it better? And so now I know that about me, and I could probably apply that elsewhere, which I did with the Independence Lab. I'm building this. So understanding whatever it is, obviously, building a business is not going to be everybody's dream job, but that is what made me light up. And I had to get in there, get my hands dirty, try a bunch of different things to understand that about myself. Because, like I said, I would have never guessed that about myself when I was in school. So, doing the things, but also being self-aware is absolutely the best way to figure that all out.
Your Independence Lab emphasizes not only professional skills, but also emotional and financial independence. Why do you see financial literacy as such a critical part of building confidence and thriving both in your job search as well as in your career life?
Well, I think that time in your life is the best time to build that financial foundation. You and I know now that that time to let your money compound is your best asset. So if you start then, you're going to be much better off come retirement time. So, I missed it. I missed it. Nobody taught me these things. Nobody really took the time to teach me financial literacy. I've talked about it pretty publicly. I was $9,000 in debt when I moved home from New York City, and I just didn't know what to do with myself or my finances. And it really came down to teaching myself. I read all the books, I listened to the podcasts, and now I'm in obviously a much better place and have, savings and investments and all of that stuff and no debt except for my mortgage. And so I had to teach myself. I don't want that to happen to young people now. I want there to be outlets, which there are a lot of them now versus when I was coming out of school. But I think it's so important for them to just understand it doesn't have to get crazy. You don't have to go and make, 1,000 investments in a bunch of different stocks. There's just about 5 or 6 steps that you should take now to set up that financial foundation for yourself and talking them through what's important and what's not, and not overwhelming them, it's going to set them up so much better for their life moving forward on that financial side.
Brianne, if you could pass on one or two key pieces of information, key action items that a grad could implement Monday to help them find their next great job easier and faster, what would those one or two things be?
Yeah, I would say two things to remember would be that confidence and curiosity beat credentials. So you don't have to have the perfect resume. As we talked about, you need to really figure out how you can show up with confidence and showcase your curiosity because the world is changing and we need people who are willing to learn. And I would say the best path to do that is to stay a student. Don't forget what you just came from. Keep learning. You are not done just because you have a degree in your hand. You need to continue learning about the industries that you want to go into. You need to absolutely start learning about AI, financial literacy, like we just covered. That is going to bolster your opportunities more than you can ever imagine. So for me, right now, I've been hiring people, interviewing people for the past 12 years in my role. So I would rather hire somebody with 60, 70, 80% of the job description, but they bring this passion for learning and self-starting and this curiosity to the table versus somebody that's, I have every bullet on my resume covered from your job description, but now I'm done learning. I'm not enthusiastic. I don't care about AI. I'm not going to really pursue any learning outside of what you make me do. I don't want to hire that person. I want to hire the first person.
Brianne, any other advice or thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners to help them make their job search easier?
I will tell you, I think that self-regulation and resilience is so important now. We started this conversation kind of talking about silence out there when you apply. Build that resilience. Make sure that you have checkpoints for yourself. So you're going to apply to 3 quality roles a week. and send 5 networking messages. So that's number one for resiliency. On the other side of it, practice your self-regulation. And I'll tell you just a super quick story about this. I thought I bombed my very first interview. I was on a phone call and I just completely didn't know the answer. But I asked her, can we come back to that question? So I collected myself, went through the rest of the interview, asked her to come back to it. And she was so impressed that that's how I got my dream role in New York City. So instead of panicking, I self-regulated. So that moment changed my life. And I would just encourage everybody to practice self-regulation.
I hope today's conversation with Brianne Rush fired you up and gave you the push to take bold steps in your own career journey. If you're ready to make your next move the best one yet, I know that she or I would be honored to help coach you through it. Let's start building that future you've been dreaming about. Your next chapter is waiting for you. So let's go make it happen. Brianne, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a great deal, and I know our listeners did as well.
Thanks so much, Bob. I really appreciate it.